Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Abilene People, the podcast here on BigCountryHomepage.com, where we talk to Abilene's most interesting people. And today, we have a most interesting person that you might or might not know. Well, if you've been around Abilene for a while, you definitely know her. But you definitely know the people that she's worked with, the people that she's guided along the path, the people that she's helped, the people that would say, I couldn't have done anything without Robyn Wertheim. How are you?
Good. How are you today, Danny?
I'm good. You are the district director for Stan Lambert, our representative here in District 71.
Yes.
Prior to Stan, you were in the same role with Susan King,
Yes.
who sat in that chair for a good long while. So you have been running the show for District 71 since when?
2007 is when I started.
Because the district director really is kind of an unsung hero. Everybody doesn't see your face, but you write a lot of stuff, you do a lot of stuff, and we're going to get a little bit into your personal, where you're from and all, but I just want to know, what does the district director do? Can you share how the sausage is made?
Yes, the district director never has the same job 2 days in a row, which is one of the things that makes it such a great job. Some days I am just giving people access to state government, state services. If someone got a speeding ticket and gave your driver's license number, I'd be the one to help straighten that out. If someone needed a flag for a fundraiser, I'd be doing that. If someone needed to schedule the representative for something, I'd do that. Some days, like yesterday, it was 6 events in a row. So it was from 7:30 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And you go to all of those?
I went to all of them yesterday, yes.
Mama.
Sometimes. And sometimes it's sitting with school kids or giving tours of the Capitol. You just never know.
So, Robyn, when you do all of that, how do you keep it straight? I'm just curious, the logistics of it all. Do you have a day timer, a Palm Pilot, a computer program? How do you keep straight all that stuff?
We have a state calendar that we all share. In the interim, there's usually Representative Lambert, a chief of staff, and myself. And of course, he's a chair now, so we also have a committee clerk. And then during the session, we also add a legislative director, and then every once in a while, we get some really good interns in Austin and here.
And how much time do you spend in Austin and how much time in Abilene?
I used to be full-time in Abilene. In 2019, I went down to work session, and I've worked all 4 sessions down there since then. So I spend 7 months when I'm there. Go in January. We hopefully finish in June, but I always stay a month. So the guys or gals there can have a vacation. And if we go into overtime, extra innings, as my boss would call it, then there's somebody there to staff it.
Well, he's an old baseball player. He would call a special session extra innings. That's good. And so when you do that, do you come back and forth on the weekends? Because, Paul is here in Abilene.
Well, I don't come back and forth much because we work very long hours. It gets to where we have 3 meals a day there. But Paul, being a professor, he teaches Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So he's usually the one that does the hard work and the travel back and forth.
So let's talk about, we'll get to Paul, but let's talk about where you started out. You were born and raised in Abilene and went to AISD public education and then to Abilene Christian University. Is all that correct?
That is correct. Matter of fact, I had some of the best teachers in the world, and that's why we moved back to raise our kiddos here. And I'm still in touch with a lot of them.
Yeah, because after college, you went to North Carolina for a while. Then you went to Pepperdine University for a while out on the West Coast. I know a little bit about that. My dad taught there. You may remember that way back in the day in the South Central LA campus location. Then my son was there as a student. And then we love LA. Did you love your time in Malibu?
I loved living in LA, except for the earth shakes. And it's super expensive to live there.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, but the people, there are a lot of people from here there, and a lot of neat things and neat experiences, including I got to meet Ronald Reagan there.
Oh, you met Reagan there, and did you go to the library and meet him, or how did that work?
I met him at Pepperdine first, and then at the library, and I have a picture of he and my son on the 4th of July one time during the fireworks when Christopher was a baby.
Oh, that's great. Did he say, "Well, Robyn, it's so good to meet you. I really enjoyed visiting with you and Paul."
No, at that time he was already ill, but Mrs. Reagan was very friendly.
Yeah, and his illness was so tragic and sad, and not taking shots at anybody. I mean, old age is tough on all of us, and all of us are headed there, and unless it escapes us because we have an exit earlier than old age. But we look at our politicians today. I mean, goodness, people don't realize that our current president is older than Reagan was when Reagan was president, and his immediate predecessor was older than our current president. And if our current president lives out his term, he will be the oldest president ever. I'm just curious, not that I plan to ask you this, but just I don't know, among friends and several thousand people who listen and watch the podcast, why do so many politicians stay so long, you think? Because Representative Lambert has decided 2026 will be his last year.
I think I asked Speaker Tom Craddock that one time. I said, "Sir, what makes you want to serve so long?" And he says, "Robyn, this is my golf game. Some people play golf. I do this." And institutional knowledge is very important in government and in politics. And so I think that has a lot to do with it. Also, we all live together in that building during session. Like I said, we eat 3 meals a day there. We do that. And so a lot of times it becomes family. And I don't know about DC, but I can definitely say some of Austin is like that.
Well, let's finish the timeline, and then I've got a question just back to the job. You left California and came back to Abilene. You said you wanted to come. One of the reasons was you want your kids to be educated in Abilene and all. And that's ultimately when you taught for a while, and then you started working for the state, and you worked first for Susan King and the last many years for Stan Lambert. What's the most rewarding parts of the job to you, and what's the most challenging parts of the job to you, Robyn?
Well, this may get a little emotional. The most rewarding parts was helping my neighbors, especially my special needs families. Some of them have become family of mine. And if you follow me on social media, you'll see some of those kiddos in my life now. Some of it is just, one of them is doing things that people deserve, like passing the WEP, which the feds did, but we had to work it on the state level so that our first responders and our educators can qualify for their spouses earn Social Security. I think that's one. Some of the most difficult things, families that lose someone in drunk driving accidents, tragedies.
So why would a person in your role work with somebody who's lost a loved one in a drunk driving accident?
Well, let's take the Blessing family that lost their daughter Aspen. They wanted people to be aware, and they took on a public role, and so they wanted a highway sign in her memory, and then they wanted a law change that we still have not accomplished yet, but I hope to see finished.
And so, do you get involved in the minutia of the movements necessary to change a law?
Yes, and so it could be something like said assisting and even assisting with benefits sometimes, but assisting the family getting the connections and assisting with them telling their story, and then they come to you with an idea, and you working with staff and others to have a law drafted.
So, Robyn, we're reminded when you talk like this that politics is ultimately moving toward good policy that helps people, that's for the common good.
Politics is what we do for about 6 months every other year during election season. Serving the people is what it's really about. And if that's not their mindset, they're in the wrong business.
Speaking of the politics, every 6 months or for a 6-month period, every few years, 2024 was a tough political year. And here locally, we saw primary challenge for Representative Lambert that we hadn't seen anything like that in a long time. I would assume that there's some of that you welcome talking about. I would assume, I don't know, I've never asked you, that there's some that you don't want to talk about, but that was kind of, the bloody sport part of politics, right?
Yes, and growing up in the big country, there's a couple of lessons you learn. I have until recently had 5 generations here. Besides God and country, is truth and hard work. And my boss is a man of truth and hard work. And I encourage people to look for that when you're looking at political candidates.
I'm going to ask you here in a bit if you have any advice for the voters as we move toward the primary season in 2026, but let's just go ahead and go there. So Representative Lambert has said, I'm not going to run, and that's opened up quite a field, although some have dropped out, but quite a field in the Republican primary, at least, for House District 71 nominee. And I know that you have to have opinions, and I'm not going to ask you specific personalities and opinions about specific people, but what advice do you have for voters? Because you kind of got there about the hard work and the virtues.
Well, first of all, please vote. Please register, participate, and weigh in. That's the first thing I would want all my neighbors to do, whether you're in line with my policy or not in line with my policy. I think the more people that participate, the better policy outcomes we have. The second thing I would say to voters is check out what you're being told. Social media is not always the best news source.
Wait, what? Oh, come on, Robyn.
Yeah, and don't take what someone says as the gospel truth.
Yeah, social media is. I think you and I have actually had this conversation briefly because I got off Facebook. It was, and really seriously, I mean this 100% serious. It was for my mental and emotional well-being. I just didn't need to see that stuff. Now, there are people who engage and can just fly right past it. There are people neck deep in the middle of all the arguments on social media regarding politics. But social media is a bit like a snake pit, and with not always Indiana Jones' safe place to land. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
And you're inside the political stuff. How do you deal with that?
Sometimes not very well. Sometimes I'll have to have my husband change my password for a few days.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I mean, you say that seriously or tongue in cheek?
No.
Would you? Excuse me if it presses too much, but would you say like I disclosed for my mental and emotional well-being? Is that kind of what you're saying there, or is it just job related only?
No, it's not just job related only, but there are a lot of people out there that are paid to influence. And I think people here do not realize how much that plays a role, whether it's bots or whether it's paid posts.
And do you think that those people that are paid to stir the pot and influence, and I know influence and stir the pot are not necessarily the same thing, but those paid actors, are they the real culprits, or what about the just agitators that just are, kind of basement warriors that, just fire off comments one after the other that are just ugly and divisive? And they're not really paid at all, but I don't know, what is that?
Well, they're both problematic. I also want people to know that some people accept money for endorsements. And that's a question you need to ask. Okay, this person's endorsed by this person. Is that a paid endorsement, or is that a true endorsement?
Interesting.
And
did that happen in the last year's primary that was so divisive and so much money spent?
I don't have the facts on that, so I'm not going to comment on it. But I do know in political races that can play a part. I have never worked with a campaign, and I've done 41 campaigns that have ever paid for an endorsement.
Wow, you've done 41 campaigns.
From local school board to State Rep,
Wow.
State Senate.
Well, I don't have a hat, but I take my hat off to you. That's incredible. I mean, really, there's not a lot of local people engaged in politics that can say that. What do you think about that?
Um,
A lot of work.
it's a lot of work, a lot of learning, met a lot of great people, got to work on a lot of good policy, but I won't be sad to walk away from it.
And when you walk away from it, let's get that timeline down. You have worked for almost 20 years for the state of Texas in this role, and then when Mr. Lambert steps down, you'll be like a year shy of that 20 mark or something. So the point is, I guess what I'm getting at is, you anticipate working another short while and maybe in Austin for some
Yes.
role in state government. But I want to ask you something. You say, okay, I'm going to work for one more year. But when you started this, didn't you say, particularly with Mr. Lambert, I'm only going to work for you for a short period of time, and it turned into multiple years?
He offered me a job for 6 months. If I worked for him for 6 months, I would have insurance for the rest of my life. At that time, that was my goal. So we started for 6 months, and we will finish with 10 years in January 2027.
So when you say, I'm only going to work one more year for the state, you think there's a chance that that could turn into multiple years? Because look, you're obviously a person who's very gifted, very good at what you do, very well respected. Finding another landing spot for another 12 months isn't going to be your challenge. Your challenge is going to be when they say, oh, I need you to stay another 12 months, or I need you to stay another 6 months, or whatever. You know, how are you going to say no to that?
Well,
Is Paul practicing with you? This is how, repeat after me, Robyn. No, I must not stay in Austin.
well, no, he's not there yet. The campaign thing being over, he's definitely happy about. The state requires me at the end of my time to take a 6-month break. And I really plan on exploring what God has in store for me.
Speaking of what God has in store for you, I mean, you've had some challenges that not every person wants to have related to your health in the middle of all of this. And I didn't prep to talk to you about this. And if you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. But I mean, I don't know that everybody I would suspect everybody who knows Robyn Wertheim knows what I'm talking about. But the casual observer who just knows that you're in state government and you work for our representative in District 71 may not know that you have been a true warrior. I mean, you have fought. And how are you today? You doing well?
I'm doing well. Right after my 50th birthday, I was diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer with lymph node involvement, and went through some pretty harsh treatment that worked, thank goodness. And so at this point, I'm no evidence of disease.
Is it true, Rob? Well, you know what? Congratulations.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Well, I almost let that pass. That's a pretty big statement you just made. And is it true that that treatment, they take you down to a place almost where, you know, if the treatment doesn't kill you, you're going to be okay?
That was true of my treatment, but I have something to say about that. Yes, I had 20 weeks of chemo.
Oh my God.
25 radiation treatments.
Oh my God.
And so a lot of people knew me when I had no hair.
Oh, I remember those days, and yet I would still see you out and about. It was amazing.
Yeah.
You never stopped.
I missed 3 days of work, my entire cancer treatment journey, for surgery, for 2 surgeries and 1 bad chemo day. But treatment has changed. I have a friend in Nashville, Tennessee. I grew up with the husband here. She was just diagnosed with the same thing, and her treatment is 7 weeks shorter. So we've made good strides.
So I would assume that anytime a cancer-related issue comes before the House in Austin, you pay special attention to that, right?
I do pay special attention. As a staffer, we are not allowed to lobby directly, but I do have some pretty proud moments. Right before I was diagnosed with cancer, we passed the CPRIT, Cancer Prevention Research Institute of Texas, which I was honored to be a research subject in. We've made it where women can choose a mastectomy or a lumpectomy, and their insurance has to cover it. And we've also got insurance to cover the breast cancer index now.
And let's just talk for a moment just about the general issue you're talking about, which is a governmental agency telling an insurance agency, you can't say no to this. That's a really important thing. That is fantastic policy conversation and policy change that should be, and I'm sure it is to a large degree, a bipartisan support. You know, I mean, I could see somebody who's for very limited government who might think government overreach is everywhere, but that's government involvement that really we rely on the government to say to agencies like an insurance carrier, you got to cover this, man. This is life and death, right?
40% of my casework has to do with insurance and access to medical care. And in a rural area, it's even more difficult. And it's anything from paying for a test to paying. Right now, I'm working on a case for a woman in her 80s that a prosthetic is not being covered. And I have a sweet baby that was denied health insurance who just turned 4 last week. And she needed heart surgery. And at first she was denied. And she had 3 older sisters. And my boss said, under no circumstances are we going to make these older girls suffer.
Wow. I know that Mr. Lambert admires your dedication to the way that the policies the state enacts or chooses not to enact affects real people in their lives. And I've heard him describe that. Is that one of the both and parts of your job? It's both rewarding and incredibly difficult emotionally?
Yes, very much so. Because when you walk with someone through a tough time in their lives and things don't work out, you have to think about, what does pro-life mean? What's government's appropriate role? What's our community's appropriate role in this?
Yeah, and for people that don't do much more than read the headlines, that whole conversation that you just took us into may seem kind of, wait, what? What are you talking about? We should be wholly pro-life, not, I say we, and it's just from my perspective. I'm using a we that is inclusive of me and my perspective. And wholly pro-life for me personally means so much more than just pro-birth. In fact, just to be totally transparent and candid, for what it's worth world, I'm very much libertarian in this way, and very much for a woman's right to choose. It's not, why should it be my choice? But I would always hope that we would choose life. I would always hope that we choose life, but not just in conversations about birth. Do you have anything to say about that? I'm not asking for your personal political opinion.
Well, and I think you've said something very important there. Pro-life is not just pro-birth. It's taking care of families. It's making sure children have what they need to succeed in life. It's making sure our schools are safe. When I started this job, we had not had a major school shooting in Texas. When I started this job, a lot more people we didn't have as many food deserts. We didn't have as many medical access issues as we do now. And so I encourage the voters and the people to not look at a decision, but to look at everything around that decision. And to know that sometimes when my boss or the state or our office works on something, there may be, it's like a spider web, and you're only seeing the spider in the center, and there's a lot of things around it. So I ask that you look at the implications as well. And, my opinion on pro-life maybe different than some other people's, but I'm going to work for the good of my neighbors. And that's what's important. And when they come to me, I don't get to say, or I don't want to say, well, did you vote for my boss, or which political party you are, or where'd you go to school, or it doesn't matter. If you're my neighbor and you live in Taylor, Jones, Callahan, Nolan counties, my job is to try to assist you.
We should bottle the last 2 minutes of this, Travis, and just get it out to everybody. Here it is. Just follow Robyn's advice here, and we'll be such a healthier, better place. I love it. What initially drew you to do this? We may have bumped up against it, but I'm still not sure I understand how you initially said, you know what, I'm gonna do this job.
Well, okay, so when I was in third grade, Gerald Ford came and spoke here, and my daddy took me to see him speak. And that started an interest. And as you know, growing up here, we had a very good congressman named Charlie Stenholm. And people from my church, Bobby Wolf, would run for city council and things. And so I always viewed that being in public office as something good. And I went to ACU thinking this is what I wanted to do. Then I met a boy. And my life changed. But it was a good change because I've been married to him for almost 38 years. So I decided to teach government. Also, I had Nell Sims in high school. What a great teacher she was. And she captivated my interest during 1984, during that presidential cycle. And she said she taught us a lot of really cool things. So I always stayed involved in politics, no matter where we moved and what we did. But then I came back home, and Abilene ISD was facing a shortage in a budget, and they were going to cut nurses and librarians. And I'd taught school in California, and they'd done that, and our kids couldn't do research projects because we didn't have library books. And we have a lot of kids that take a lot of medication now. And to manage that, we kind of needed nurses. And so I went to a public forum, and 2 school board members approached me afterwards. One said, let's have coffee. And one said, if you don't like what we're doing, find somebody to run against me or run against me. So I did. And that was the first time, I think, in 33 years, an AISD incumbent had been beaten in a school board race. I didn't run, but I found somebody to run. And then I just started getting involved in local politics, just caring about my neighbors. I was a full-time mom.
And politics really requires that, and not everybody understands it. That it's a little bit like a car, you know.
Yeah.
What you see is the outside, but the engine and the transmission's in there. You're the engine and the transmission.
And so I just kind of got involved, and then Susan King met me one December 23rd and said, let's have some fun. Let's run me for state rep. I said, okay, let's do that. Didn't think anything of it. Just didn't even really think she had a chance to win because there were so many people. And when she won, she said, oh my goodness, I need a district director. And Shay Hall said, you've got 2 of them right there. There's my mom and there's Robyn. Why don't they split the job? And that my husband said, well, you gave up that dream one time. Go have fun.
So Janet Payne and Robyn Wertheim were the 2 engine and transmissions for Susan King. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's an interesting story. I'm glad I thought to ask and circle back to it. And over all the years, you had to have met some characters. Now, you mentioned having met President
Reagan,
but we just talked about him, Gerald Ford.
Mm-hmm.
You met President Ford, you met President Reagan. Have you met other presidents?
I have heard them speak. Used to, Abilene was a stop for almost everyone.
Yeah. By the way, I remember when Jimmy Carter stopped in Abilene.
Yes.
Made a campaign appearance at Abilene Regional Airport.
Yes. And I didn't hear them maybe while they were president, but I have been fortunate enough to hear every president speak at some point except Trump and Biden. Even I only heard Obama welcome a crowd, but He came to Austin. He welcomed a crowd. It may not have been when they were president.
Well, it counts.
It counts.
It counts.
By
the way, I don't know if you've seen it, but on social, there's a thing going around of, I don't know where, I don't know how, but President Obama surprised a plane full of veterans.
Yes.
Did you see that?
Yes.
Wasn't that gold? Just reminds you so much of how much we love when a leader acknowledges our servicemen.
Yes.
And women. It was great.
Yeah. Those things. Those things.
Yeah.
Like I said.
And you love that. That's the kind of thing you would set up.
That's what leadership.
That's what you would do. Yeah.
That's leadership, whether I agree or not. So anyway, so I've gotten to meet them. I've met some really funny people. I've met some really cool people. I'm not going to lie. Matthew McConaughey is really a nice guy.
I was going to say, give us some of the favorites. I was going to ask you about Matthew McConaughey. You probably met Matthew McConaughey just being in Austin.
Yes. But some of the really more interesting people, honestly, are the people that have experienced something and they want to change things. And so, and some of those people are right here in the big country. And so some of the people I've been so honored to meet is, I have a little friend named Hunter. He's 15. He's about to do his Make-A-Wish trip. And he comes and testifies about what it's like and his mom for a special needs family. And people that have been through things and walked those halls, and still advocate time after time. And like I said, whether you agree with them or don't agree with them, hearing their stories and their grit is just pretty amazing. Governors are always interesting people. Governor Perry, Governor Abbott have both served, since then. I'm a tennis person, so meeting Andy Roddick in the Capitol was pretty cool. I don't know. They're just a bunch of different. When somebody wins a championship and comes, whether it's a high school team or whether they've won the World Series, that's a pretty cool thing. To get in an elevator and you're then there with the Houston Astros and the World Series trophy was kind of a fun experience.
I literally bumped into Ann Richards one time while she was the governor. And that story is one that you and I should share sometime over a cup of coffee, because security grabbed me, but I didn't know she was there. I just turned around and literally bumped into her. And you have met some really fun people, some big names, but you're unusual because it's the people that we don't know their names that mean the most to you. And not every political, I don't mean this in a pejorative way, but political operative, somebody that's operating behind the scenes to help politics move along and policy move along and help our elected officials in public service. That's probably a better way to say what I mean, but not everybody who works in that world is like you. Not everybody's going to pay attention to Hunter and count Hunter among the most interesting and influential persons that they've met. Not that they disregard Hunter necessarily, but he's not their favorite. That's who you are. I did a Google search for Robyn Wertheim.
Oh no.
And it's kind of interesting. There's several. One is a meerkat pet distributor in South Africa. There's a Robyn Wertheim that if you want to buy a meerkat in South Africa, you can do that from a Robyn Wertheim, but that's not you, right?
Not me.
And then there's one that is some kind of influencer or wannabe influencer on Instagram, but that's not you, I don't think.
Nope.
Then there was one who was visiting a group of blind students here in District 71 and hugging their neck and making sure they knew they were valued, and who said to the blind students several years ago, in fact, it was when this particular Robyn Wertheim worked for Susan King, so I think this one's you, who said to the blind students, we're going to be advocating for you and for everything you need down in Austin. And the students had told their teacher, who was interviewed, that that was one of the most important people we've ever met. And I can get a little emotional now. That's
Me
a pretty
too.
big deal. And not everybody's like that.
I I don't do this job to be known. I'm an introverted extrovert. I like people, but I don't like to be in the front.
Yeah.
But it's a real blessing to get to meet those kids.
Well, they're blessed to have you. We're blessed to have you. Thank you so much. You know, your time with Stan Lambert will end when his current term ends, which I guess will be end of 2026. And we wish you the best.
Thank you very much.
You deserve it. And one last question I ask a lot of guests, and I want to ask you, what would you like to see in Abilene in 10 or 20 years?
Oh, that's easy. What I want to see in Abilene in 10 or 20 years, Abilene's going to grow. We've got a new aircraft coming. We've got AI plants coming. I want to see people known for this good school districts we have around here, for the good neighbors we have around here. And I want people to want to be here so badly that they're looking for opportunities to move their businesses here because they know this is a community that loves one another.
Robyn Wertheim on the podcast. Thank you for coming in. You're a superstar, you know? You don't think so, but I do. And I think that listeners of this podcast see it. And I just appreciate you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Danny.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for joining us here on Abilene People. What a time well spent, huh? And a big shout out to Travis Corrigan, our ace producer over there running the switcher board. I guess now, Travis, I have to say you're running the computer board because things are changing all the time and the way you do your job's changing. But the way that you join us isn't going to change right yet. You're still here on bigcountryhomepage.com and anywhere that we drop this profile and audio, a podcast in audio form. And we do thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Danny Sims, and we will see you next time here on Abilene People. Thank you.